Welcome to Behind the Narrative with me, Katharine Spence. Unfortunately, Ian can't join us for this episode, but I'm delighted to be joined by today's guest, Shevaun Haviland, Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce and one of the most influential voices speaking for UK business today. Since taking up the role in 2021, Shevaun has been at the forefront of representing firms of all sizes, connecting the realities faced by businesses on the ground with policymakers in Westminster and beyond. Her career spans consultancies, global corporates and senior roles at the centre of government, including leading business engagement at Number 10 and the Cabinet Office. Awarded a CBE for services to business, Shevaun has become a key figure in debates around growth, skills, trade, and how the UK economy adapts in an increasingly volatile and complex global environment. Shevaun, welcome to Behind the Narrative.
Hello, delighted to be here.
Shevaun, great to meet you and great for you to be here today. Thank you so much for joining Behind the Narrative. Can we get straight into UK business and what you are seeing in your role as the things that are really worrying businesses at the moment? We see so many headlines, so much bad news out there around national insurance rises, business rates, inflation, you name it. But what do you think is really worrying businesses out of all of those? And perhaps there's something else.
Yes, well, gosh, that's a big question. So I've been in this role 5 years this month, came May 21, where if you remember, we had Boris's sunny up plans, but in fact we had quite a lot more COVID to go, Ukrainian war, energy prices, double-digit inflation, 3 prime ministers in a year, general election, big tax increases last year. So it has been just a constant challenge for business. Look, I have the joy of travelling the country, meeting the incredible business leaders of the UK week in and week out. And they do outline the challenges. And they do say, just cost after cost after cost. It's really hard. It's a grind. It's just another thing and another thing on top of what's already a challenging environment. But having said all that, they then generally turn and say, but look, come and see my new bit of kit, or look at the new office I've opened, or come and meet my amazing apprentices. And they just have this can-do, solution-orientated, entrepreneurial attitude that I just think is incredible. And the business leaders of the UK are born optimists. You have to be to run a business. But actually, that is the thing we need to sort of turbocharge and, really bottle so we can grow our economy.
And is there a difference between firms of different sizes? So I know you're a great champion of SMEs, and we'll come on to that. But do you see that different challenges for some of the big corporates, the global companies, as for the smaller businesses? Or is it all they're facing the same issues?
They are all facing the same issues, no matter what the size. Bigger businesses have more ability to absorb quite a lot of it. They have bigger balance sheets. Actually, it's also very sectoral. So if you're working in very tight margin businesses like hospitality and retail, any increase in costs where you can't pass it on in prices, which at the moment you really can't, makes it even harder. So it's a sectoral play as well. But in general, people do say, oh, Chambers of Commerce, you represent businesses of all sizes and all sectors. Surely that's not possible. But actually, in general, the same issues are for all business.
Yeah, you mentioned retail and hospitality sector, and they've come in for a particular battering, it feels, in the last year or two. And there is a huge amount of support, really, out in the public for that sector, which is a gem of the UK. We have fantastic hospitality and retail and restaurant businesses here. Do you feel that's recognised by government? I know you had a role in Number 10 in the Cabinet Office, and also you must be engaging regularly with them and putting your point of view across. And I know that you're very active in that. Do you feel that message is getting through? Because it seems there's a disconnect between what people feel about retail and hospitality and actually what the government is taking seriously.
Retail and hospitality are often the heart of any high street. And our chambers, we have 50 across the country. Those places are super important, and those businesses are, the heart and soul of those places. So they're absolutely crucial for the high street, for a thriving community, for a strong local economy. Yes, I do think government is listening. we're in there week in and week out. We did a lot of work. We're an apolitical organisation. We work with all parties. We did a lot of work with the Labour Party before the general election. They put 82 of our policy recommendations in their manifesto. We saw quite a lot of activity early on. We were hit by the national insurance increases. That was definitely, we expected some, but not that size. And for retail and hospitality, the move of the threshold was even more impactful. So businesses have been struggling to absorb that. But, what we want to see from government is we've moved through that now. You asked us to shoulder that cost. We're doing it. Let's crack on and deliver the other stuff that was promised.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that has to be growth, and it's that it seems to be very elusive at the moment, not just for that sector, but across the whole of UK business. What would you say needs to happen in order to stimulate growth? And I know you've got various initiatives going on at the BCC itself, but what is the one thing that can really help UK business growth?
I've got to have three things, Katharine.
Okay, three things.
So one, trade. So exporting is the quickest way to grow any economy. We estimate that last year, 2-point increase in export would have added 0.6% to GDP. Think about that. On a 1.3% growth point, that's huge. So we've got to help our businesses export. Free trade agreements are good, but then we've got to work out how we can help businesses actually use them. So we really want to see some progress with the UK-EU relationship and making that easier for our members.
Will it be? I mean, do you feel that there's a lot of I know you're in the middle of your points and we'll get to the number 3, but just on that, do you feel there is a move to be closer to the EU? That's not just a rumour?
Absolutely. Huge progress has been made since this government's come in. Is it as fast as we like it to be? No. We've got the Leaders' Summit in June. We are very hopeful to see an agreement, actually, on food and drink export, on the electricity trading system and youth exchange. So, that we're pushing them very hard. Right. So second is what we call sort of investment. So one of the reasons the economy hasn't grown fast enough is because businesses have been holding on to their cash because of all the uncertainty. They haven't been investing. So we need to help them invest domestically. And there's a couple of things happening there. So we've seen some really good move forward on infrastructure investment. So this government is changing the planning laws. There is a huge amount of money all over the world that wants to invest in the UK. The question is, can we find them investable propositions? So signing off big infrastructure, Sizewell nuclear power station, Heathrow, Luton. We've got Warner Brothers investing in Luton in a new theme park. There's a huge amount of investment coming in. And that leads to supply chains of SMEs, and that drives incredible local growth. So if you've ever been down to Hinkley Point C in Somerset, to the nuclear power station there, currently the Europe's biggest building site, they have put 5 billion into local businesses in the last 5 years.
Well, the trouble is we don't have a great reputation in the UK for completing infrastructure projects on time and on budget. In fact, it's very, very poor record. So again, that is also something which I don't suppose it's anything you particularly or BCC can do much about. But I think that's also a barrier to investment here.
I think it might be, but I think it's also a bit of a mindset thing. So if you think about Crossrail, Elizabeth Line, at the time everyone was like, it's not going to work. It's going to cost too much. Look at it now. It's the most used railway line in Europe, apparently, and how successful it's been. So I think we need to have a change of mentality about our big infrastructure. For right, for wrong, we're obviously now going to see a lot more investment in defence across not just the UK but Europe, and we have incredible innovators in that space. Again, small, medium-sized, growing businesses. So that's going to be good from an investment point of view. And again, I come back to how we can ensure that the money going into defence and infrastructure goes into local supply chains. And by the way, when you think about supply chains, you think about sort of construction and manufacturing, but actually hotels, local restaurants. I took a cab to Hinkley when I first joined from the station to the power station, and the guy who drove the cab said, "I work for the bloke who owns this company. Used to have 2 cars. Now he's got a fleet of 40, and he's a millionaire." because of that investment in that area. So that's 2.
Yeah.
And then 3, topic du jour, of course, AI. So we lived through the third digital revolution, I think, was as we came to work, didn't we?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing the 4th. And if we can ensure that the SMEs, particularly of the UK, adopt AI quickly and in the right way, we will drive incredible productivity gains. So we at the British Chambers of Commerce have an AI Academy. We are helping our members understand the art of the possible. Because the last time round, if you remember, if I said to you, you need a new website or you need a new CRM, you sort of know what that means and what benefit it will have to you. If I said to you, oh, you should get AI, no idea. So this is a 12-hour training program. So you really understand the art of the possible. And the clever thing about it is it totally understands you and your job description. So it adapts all the training to your role. And the data coming out the back is suggesting that people are saying they're saving 3 to 5 hours a week in their working week. And if you ladder that up nationally, huge productivity gains.
Yeah, it's funny that you're being very positive about AI, and I'm really positive about AI, but there's so much negativity around it and a fear. I mean, maybe it was that when the World Wide Web first launched, maybe there was the same amount of fear. I mean, I can't remember. There probably was. With all these things, there's an element of fear.
That was slower, wasn't it?
It was slower.
It
was slower, and it it was sort of one computer in the whole office. That's
and
maybe
no
two.
social media.
No social media. So yeah, of course, the pace of change is very, very fast, and that's why it might be a little scary. But there's this point around productivity. I don't think that message is getting out enough because it's usually fear around jobs.
Yeah.
Especially for young people, especially for graduates coming through. So what's the mood from UK business? Who sits on the positive, negative fence on it? Are you reflecting a general positivity about the benefits you can bring to businesses? Or is there still quite a lot of worry about jobs?
I'd say it falls into a couple of camps. We are tracking, with our members how they're adopting AI and what they're using. We have seen a big uptick in those claiming to be using AI, but the evidence suggests it's still very surface level. It's still helping me write my emails as opposed to I've reviewed my business processes and really embedded it. And there are very few businesses who are at that end of the scale. In the end, like all these things, it comes down to leadership. If you're running a small or medium-sized business, you're currently just trying to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
And this sort of goes into the slightly too difficult box. I'm going to have to think about it. I'm not sure. And some of the feedback we've got is that it's actually the senior members of staff that are struggling a bit with it. But we don't think it's going to, it's not going to take everyone's job tomorrow, 100% not. But as someone said to me, AI is not going to take your job, but someone who can use AI might.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I think that's why we've all got to upskill.
Yeah,
we have basically.
Yeah, it's all our personal responsibilities to understand it. We at the Chambers have put all our staff through the training. Obviously, it keeps changing, so we have to keep going. But at least we're beginning to understand it.
One more big topic before we get into a little bit about how you got to where you got to is, again, huge topic. Economic security. And I know that the BCC is really championing this, and you've led that. But it's just, I reflected that a few years ago and pre-COVID, before you joined the British Chambers of Commerce, there was never talk about economic security. No. It was all about globalization. It was all about going out and expanding into the world and making it easier to be global. And globalization was good. And now we've seemed to have retreated into a keeping our borders business-wise very, very strict, making sure we've got tight supply chains, positives and negatives of that. But economic security seems to have become such an important thing now. Is it here to stay? What's your view on where we're going to head with this?
Yeah, I think it's here to stay. I think the businesses have, as you say, not had to think about geopolitical risk before, but the world order is changing and we've got to adapt to that. So, tariffs have been a massive shock to some of our members. We've had 3 conflicts in the last 4 years, depending on what you're counting. And that's like most businesses don't understand that. So what we have done is we have built a joint unit with the Foreign Office. So we have a diplomatic advisory hub now in the chambers. We're using the intel from the Foreign Office and intel from all our British chambers around the world. We have 72 in countries around the world, so huge global network. And we're feeding that information to our members. Because if you're a huge business, you might have someone in charge of geopolitical forward-looking, but you probably don't. And fortunately, unfortunately, we launched it the week before the Iranian conflict started, and we had 1,000 businesses over 1,000 on our first webinar because it broke the system and we had to get a new one. But it just shows the appetite of business to want to understand. Clearly, we're not getting any answers, but we're able to bring experts onto the webinar from the Foreign Office, from our network, to help them at least make some sense of what was going on.
And there's that feeling, isn't there, of sort of, as you said, just keeping the lights on at the moment and not really able to look forward beyond. But that's where you can help and go, this is what the new world order is going to be. Because I think it really is a struggle for people to look beyond just this crisis now and try and navigate around it. And I think the global businesses that we work with at H Advisors do have ways, as you say, of going, okay, we're used to things going on around the world, we find a way around it. But I think for those UK-based businesses that are trying to export, for example, as you said, that must be really tough at the moment.
It is. And I was with a fantastic business in Leeds a few weeks ago called Sound Leisure. They make beautiful big jukeboxes, you know, like old-fashioned Wurlitzers with all the multicolours, owned by the Beckhams, by the Kardashians, and David Hasselhoff was my favourite celebrity photo. Anyway, and they are huge exporters of these beautiful bits of entertainment kit. And he was saying to me, you know, we were just struggling again with the US tariff changes that happened in February. We were thinking, we'll double down on our work in the Middle East. Then, of course,
right, yeah,
Iran. And he was like, right, let's go back to Europe, some of where it was, you know, much more challenging for the last few years, and have a look again at our Spanish and Italian markets. So businesses adapt. They're like, right, what's next? Let's stay agile, you know, look ahead. They're really good at adapting. It's just added effort, time, and cost.
Well, I mean, you talked about that entrepreneurial spirit and that positivity, which you have in spades from your career. And I have to ask, before joining the BCC, you've had so many different roles. Which was the one that has prepared you the most? And please say Disneyland. Paris.
I have been so lucky with my career, although I was laughing at one point, it's looking a little bit eclectic, but starting off in consultancy in London and then getting to go and work in the New York office for 2.5 years was an incredible, in your mid-20s, that's incredible. I never thought I would say London was quiet until I spent 3 years in Manhattan. And that was still when the pubs used to shut at 11 here, and they're open 24/7. Anyway, then came back to work for the Walt Disney Company. Truly, it is a magical experience, including 4 years in Paris, at Disneyland Paris. We opened the second theme park there. So growing businesses, big corporates, went to WPP to do sort of back to agency side. So really understand how big business works. But what I realised after having my second child is I wanted to do that thing I always wanted to do, which is sort of start my own business. So I actually joined a friend of mine who I'd met in my first job on the first day. And we started what was then a consumer experience agency, so sort of mid-2000s. But very quickly it became a digital agency because that was when it was really
taking off.
Yeah, we built Smirnoff's first ever Facebook page.
Really?
Yeah, the client said, "Oh, what is this Facebook you talk of?" And we said, "Oh, we think it's going to be big. You should get on it." We did. I built apps for the iPad before it even arrived in the UK. So we were really at the bleeding edge of that work. And that sort of took me into working for a foundation and early social impact investing, so small business as a force for good. And that had always been a bit of a passion of mine because I grew up first half of my childhood on the Wirral near Liverpool, because my dad worked for Unilever, and that's where Port Sunlight was.
Okay.
Have you ever been to Port Sunlight?
No.
So built by Lord Leverhulme at the turn of the last century, who was one of those sort of first ever Victorian philanthropists who believed in looking after your people in your business. He built this village for his workers, gave them soap to keep the germs at bay, etc.
Wow, yeah.
So, early what you might call business as a force for good. And I got invited to an event at number 11 Downing Street for social impact investors because I was sort of doing it a bit myself. And I have to sort of confess, despite having a degree in politics, philosophy and economics, I had to check where it was on a map. And there I met a lady who ran business partnerships in the Cabinet Office. And I linked in with her, and I didn't really think more of it. This is a good LinkedIn story.
Yep.
This is a always nurture your network story.
Yep.
Anyway, she got in touch, said she was moving on. Long story short, I ended up getting the job in Cabinet Office because I wanted that job because it was big business and government for social policy change. So it was big business as a force for good. Joined 3 months before the EU referendum. Great time to join, they said. Cameron's just been elected.
Bit busy.
3 years of Clearwater. Anyway, so I was in government for 5 years exactly in Cabinet Office, and then 2 years in number 10 working for Theresa May. 5 years, 3 prime ministers, 2 general elections, an EU referendum, an actual leaving of the EU, and a year of COVID. So it was, as we like to say with great British understatement, interesting. But I tell you all of that to say that experience in big business, small business and government turns out to be an excellent combination for this job.
Absolutely. And I love the shout out for consultancies. I mean, I very, very rarely meet business leaders who've worked in an agency.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so it's nice because it's the multi-client approach. You have to be, adapt. You have to dot around. So it's that experience, I'm sure, helps with your many members at BCC.
Well, I think you have to love the variety, don't you? You have to love the breadth of it and the constant change as well, and thinking about something new and different. So I love the intellectual challenge of that.
Well, how do you represent such a diverse group of businesses? I always think it's a challenge for organisations like yourself or trade associations where you've got your view about what you want to say. We really need to manage the risk around, say, geopolitics. We need to, but there are some businesses who might not like your stance of what you're taking. How do you find the right line to take?
Yeah. It's a constant balance between representation and leadership. So how do we do that? We have an incredible research unit. So we are very evidence-based. We are talking to our members day in and day out. So we published a quarterly economic survey, 5,000 businesses a quarter. It really is the voice of British business. The Chancellor uses it, the Governor, IMF, etc. So very evidence-based. We talk to our businesses all the time. We use that to develop policy ideas. We have sort of structures to test those ideas. But in the end, actually, the vast majority of positions we take and the voice that I am the collective voice for our members, the vast majority have the same view on things. And if I am talking about something that's specific to a sector or a size, I just call it out. So I'll say, this is particularly difficult for small and medium-sized businesses, for example.
And you've got to provide solutions there, haven't you, Shevaun? Because when I speak to businesses, I was at a dinner recently, while there is a positivity and the great British positivity, there's also a bit of moaning that goes on. And people like to moan, it's terrible, business rates. But the question back is, well, what would you do differently as a business? What needs to happen for things to change? So you have some great ideas, I know, but what is the thing that you think would really help UK businesses now that is positive, that could be a change that would actually be realistic? I mean, to say we need to scrap NICs, it's just not going to happen, right? So, or the NICs rise, as it were, that has been very difficult for businesses to absorb. So what do you think could happen that is realistic to help businesses right now?
Costs, as you've just outlined, are the number one challenge. tax,
Yeah.
number one. Business rates reform absolutely needs to happen. We have literally been banging on about that. Well, certainly since I joined and before that. And you will hear the same from hospitality and retail. So it is no longer fit for purpose in a world of e-commerce. And we saw that promise from the last government and this one. It is hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but it's not beyond the wit of a lot of great brains to sort that out. So in terms of lowering costs, business rates would be number one.
Yeah.
But we do want the government to look at over this parliament how they can reduce costs. Businesses are more than happy to pay great salaries, the national living wage, but the national living wage has gone up 45% in the last 5 years. Over 5 years, it's gone up 45%. That is just more costs that you cannot pass on. So how can we reduce those costs? Look, things that are really clear and present to us is what is going to happen in the Middle East. We see energy prices ticking up. Businesses don't have an energy price cap like consumers do.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that, actually.
Yeah, that's right. So last time round after Ukraine, we worked very hard with government. And if you remember, there was an energy price cap for business for 6 months. Liz Truss brought that in. So we are saying to government, again, you've got to keep a very close eye on this. Businesses buy a lot of fixed-term contracts. So a lot of those will be coming up. And even before this conflict, 25% of businesses were telling us they were struggling to pay their energy bills. So that is a very clear and present danger.
The UK, it has the highest energy bills in Europe.
It does. So we need to accelerate the move to renewables while at the same time ensuring that we are making the most of our own oil and gas reserves. And then the other thing coming down the track, which some businesses have got their heads around and some haven't yet, is the new employment rights bill.
Right, yeah.
So the act is now passed royal assent. There are quite a few more details to iron out. But that is, as the government put it, a once-in-a-generational change in employment law, which is a whole new set of regulations that businesses are going to understand. And remember, most businesses don't have an HR department.
No, or even access to good legal advice in-house. I mean, that's something that probably you will try to help with.
We do. We provide a lot of that, and we do provide HR support. But it's another thing to get your head around, and it's another set of costs. So as of we're nearly out of April, aren't we? So beginning of April this year saw new sick pay rules come in, sick pay from day one. I was chatting to a guy who runs, he owns 4 or 5 very successful pubs in Kent. He said, I didn't realise, Shevaun, but, if someone calls in sick the night before, can't do their shift tomorrow, I have to pay them for their shift and I have to find someone else and then pay them for the same shift.
It's just admin burden, isn't it? It's the red tape as well as the cost. It's just the stress and the cost.
Yeah, because he needs a new software system to track that, doesn't he?
Yeah. It sounds like it's going to get harder before it gets easier.
So look, we have, I need to be fair. The government have already stepped in on some of the energy costs for business. They've expanded what they call the BICs, which is energy intensive users. So that has expanded to more support, which is a good thing. And we are working closely with them, keeping a very close eye. But yes, I mean, we're already seeing GDP forecasts being brought down for the rest of this year. We're hoping that the Bank of England is going to hold interest rates. We expect them to be cut. So hold is not as good.
Yeah. I mean, they were going to be cut before Iran, and that sort of seems to have kiboshed the on-track reduction that was sort of mooted, but...
Yeah. So, businesses use expressions like, it's like working in treacle, it's a tsunami of costs, but whatever the roller coaster, whatever the metaphor is, we've still got to hold on tight.
Yes.
Yeah.
BCC, what next for the British Chambers of Commerce? You've been there 5 years now. What's next for the next 5 years? And actually, when we spoke before, what I found interesting when we were just chatting earlier was just how old and traditional the institution is and how well respected it is globally. I think people don't necessarily realise that it's 160 years old and is global. It's a British Chamber of Commerce is genuinely global. So that's exciting, isn't it? And what do you see as its future?
Yeah, it's an amazing organisation. It's so rare, I think, to be able to say you represent a totally unique organisation, and as you say, global. So 130 chambers around the world. We're also members of the International Chambers of Commerce. They're the only non-governmental body with a seat at the UN.
Yeah.
So, right to the top. And that means, of course, as a global organisation, that trade is absolutely at our heart. It's a part of our DNA. And although my role has been around 166 years, some of the chambers are much older than that. Do you know where the first ever Chamber of Commerce was invented?
No.
So think trade.
Trade, Liverpool.
Not bad. It was actually Marseille.
Really?
Marseille. What year?
Where are we now? 2026. I'm going to work backwards.
Yeah.
1880.
1599. 1599.
I'm so
you
wrong.
are really far out. So the merchants of Marseille had a problem. They had a problem. So they clubbed together, they came together and they said, how are we going to fix our problem? The problem was that the ships were arriving into the harbour empty because they'd been pirated on the way in as they arrived. So the Marseille merchants got together, they put their money in a pot, and what did they buy with their money?
Better captains.
Nearly. They bought their own private army.
Okay.
Which I assume is like ex-pirates, right? Gone to the other side. And they guarded the ships coming in to port, so their goods were there when they arrived. Obviously, as Chambers of Commerce, we don't need to guard against pirates in general anymore. But as I say, trade is at our heart. So we want our businesses to trade around the world. That's what we want to, is a big play for us. We just launched a trade accelerator with our partners in Singapore in life sciences, one of the industrial strategy sectors. That's going to be fantastic to help UK medtech, health tech businesses export. And really, that's the heart of our message for the next 3 years, running up to the next general election. So
it's trade,
believe it or not.
Yes,
trade,
another election, yes. Trade, export.
Investment in infrastructure and defence. And how are we helping our members adopt AI? And all of that is what's going to help drive economic growth. With the caveat that we hope that the uncertainty around the world perhaps calms down a little bit.
I mean, it's been a particularly gruesome 3 or 4 years, as you say. I mean, on the other hand, I feel that you're right. The British businesses, particularly, if it's not one thing, it's another. I mean, there's always uncertainty. You have to plan for volatility, don't you? And I think that's part of the skill and part of the role of being a business leader is to deal with that huge amount of volatility and cope with anything that gets thrown at you.
It is, and we need that confidence. We need the government and business to be talking up UK business. When I travel the world, people love working with the UK. They love the brand. There are hundreds of reasons to start, grow and invest in a business in the UK. I mean, that's my job, to do that work. And so I am eternally optimistic, although I think my friends call me rose-tinted brain, but I do believe that optimism is a great leadership quality because you take people with you, right?
Yeah.
You're selling a vision.
You've got to inspire
Exactly.
Otherwise, if you're doom and gloom.
I mean, name me a pessimist who really succeeded in something.
Well, just one final thing before we finish. I did want to talk about, you mentioned there just there's some people like working with the Brits and British businesses, and there's that brand piece. But I was at an event recently with the founder of LinkedIn. Actually, we were talking about LinkedIn earlier. And there's this whole American way of embracing failure a bit better. Do you think we need, as Brits, to go, it's okay to fail, just pick ourselves up and go, or do we hang our head too much and sort of retreat?
I mean, totally. I think what do they say, the Americans? No one's going to invest in you until you've failed 3 times at starting a business. That agility and that dynamism is something I think we can really learn from. The ability to quickly fail and start again, learn and start again, learn and start again. It's what we do. And as businesses, taking those risks, doing something different, giving it a try as an employee or a business, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Shevaun, it's been amazing to speak to you. And I just have one question, which for this podcast, Behind the Narrative, I did give you a little bit of warning.
You did.
Unlike some of the questions you've thrown at me when I had no warning about having to guess trade routes and everything like that. But you did have warning on this. Tell us a secret that no one else knows. It can be personal, it can be professional, a little tidbit that gives an insight into you.
Okay, so I did tell this to my husband and he thinks I'm ridiculous. And I actually haven't met anyone who agrees with me, so I hope you do. But I would like to be immortal.
Really?
I'd like to live forever.
Really?
Imagine all the people you can meet, all the places you could go, all the things you could see. Will you join me?
It depends on how fit and healthy I would be. In terms
That is
of
the first people say. People say, well, how old would you be?
I mean, you sleep in an oxygen bubble and all that kind of thing.
Well, you either have to be reborn every time, don't you? Which actually would be quite tedious. Or I think something around, you've got to have enough experience but not be too old, haven't you?
Yeah.
So I reckon 42.
That's good, actually.
Good age.
And also, our wardrobes would come back round again.
Oh, I mean, I don't know about you. Mine have already come round a couple of times.
Already. We could have another cycle out of it. That would be a big bonus.
With many cycles.
Big bonus. That'd be good. No, I can see that. I can see that's a good thing to wish for. You know, you're working.
You're not sure though, are you?
I'm not that sure because I worry about things like you see everybody die around you. Yeah, that's not great.
No.
So
there'll be a lot of emotion involved.
A lot of emotion involved, but I like the principle. I like the principle of it, of seeing things through.
Yeah,
seeing
I also
how
have a
things
large
change.
collection of sequin jackets.
Do you?
And I would be able to wear them in perpetuity.
Well, maybe not.
Well, get some more.
Secret what? Like blazers,
bomber jackets.
Are we talking Saturday Night Fever with all of
Yeah, some of them some are more extreme than others.
Yeah.
From the multicoloured to the sort of low key.
I look forward to seeing you at your next very, very smart, serious UK business event in a sequin jacket.
I will be.
Thank you for that, Shevaun. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.